Just imagine for a second, what would happen if both the President of the United States and the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom were assassinated? What kind of global shockwaves would that send? Well, that's exactly what happens in today's story. A Russian mafia boss manages to kidnap both world leaders. So, what happened next? Let's dive right in. The story begins in the town of Buñol, Spain, right in the middle of the world-famous Tomato Festival. Every year during this festival, hundreds of tons of tomatoes are thrown around in a massive celebration of chaos and joy. In the middle of all this, we meet Noel, a journalist on the surface, but in reality, an undercover Secret Service agent. He wasn't alone either. Alongside him were several other agents from the CIA and MI6. This was actually a joint operation between the US and the UK. Their mission? Capture a notorious Russian arms dealer named Viktor Gradov. And after a bit of back and forth, suddenly, Viktor appears right in front of them. The agents quickly prepare to make their move. But then, shockingly, more people who look exactly like Viktor show up. The agents become confused, uncertain who the real Viktor is. As they scramble to identify him, it becomes clear they were the ones being hunted. Before they could defend themselves, Viktor's men ambush them and begin executing the agents one by one. Only Noel manages to put up a fight, taking out a few of Viktor's men. But it was already too late. Viktor's crew had stolen highly classified CIA and MI6 documents. Noel tried to turn the tables and take some of them hostage, but suddenly, a young man appears from behind and shoots Noel dead on the spot. And all of this, watched intently from a rooftop by Viktor himself. Next, the story shifts to London. We see the British Prime Minister, Samuel, relaxing in his room. On TV, he watches the news. The US President, William, is making his first international trip to the UK after taking office. From there, he plans to attend a NATO summit in Italy. It's worth noting, before becoming president, William was a Hollywood actor. Watching all this unfold, Samuel gets a bit annoyed and heads out for a jog. While running through the streets, Samuel receives devastating news. 13 agents from the CIA and MI6 were killed in a brutal attack in Spain. Among the dead was Noel. Hearing this, Samuel is visibly shaken. The next morning, we see crowds of British citizens gathered outside the royal palace, eager to welcome the American president, William. He had become incredibly popular, and people adored him. William soon arrives at the palace. His assistant, Ellie, briefs him about the tragic incident in Spain. At the same time, the British Prime Minister's assistant informs him that their actual target in Spain had been the arms dealer, Viktor Gradov, who had now turned into a full-blown terrorist. Viktor was now manufacturing weapons for the black market. A few years ago, Viktor had bought a stash of plutonium. As soon as intelligence agencies got wind of it, they launched strikes on his manufacturing plants and wiped them out. Back to the present, as the leaders discuss the situation, they head toward a press conference. This is where President William and Prime Minister Samuel meet in person for the first time. They exchange greetings, size each other up. William warns Samuel to watch out for journalist Jack. He asks too many loaded questions, William says. In return, Samuel tells William not to say anything off script. But things don't go according to plan. At the press conference, William starts throwing out dramatic movie-style lines, and Samuel gets annoyed. He gives the floor to Jack, the journalist. Jack wastes no time. He starts firing one question after another about the failed mission in Spain. William becomes visibly uncomfortable. He tries to dodge the questions and quickly wraps up the conference. Angry, William storms into Samuel's office. "I told you not to let Jack speak," he yells. Samuel snaps back. "This is my country. Don't tell me how to run it. You're the new guy here. You don't even know how to handle a presidency yet. I've been doing this for 6 years." Their shouting match is overheard by both their assistants, and they realize something troubling. The media might already have the impression that these two world leaders aren't exactly best friends. So, they come up with a plan. According to this plan, they'll head to Poland, together, on the same flight. And once the British Prime Minister boards the American president's plane, the entire world will witness their unity, a clear sign that the two nations are now standing as one. Hearing this, the two finally agree to travel together. Meanwhile, we see Viktor, the Russian arms dealer, inside a luxurious villa in France, discussing his next move. But one of his own, a sniper who had failed during the Spain operation, could have gotten Viktor killed that day. Enraged, Victor shoots him dead on the spot. Back in London, in front of thousands of cameras and reporters, the President of the United States and the British Prime Minister board the same aircraft, Air Force One. The world now sees how close their friendship has become. The plane takes off. Inside, Sam and Will begin chatting like old friends. At one point, Will even introduces Sam on a video call with his wife and kids. Everything seems perfectly fine. But suddenly, a flight crew member barges into the cockpit. In the blink of an eye, he kills everyone inside and seizes control of the entire aircraft. He disables the radar signal and sends a new signal to another aircraft. That signal is soon picked up by a massive plane in the air, one controlled by a group of terrorists. They immediately begin pursuing Air Force One. Inside, the President and Prime Minister are stunned. Nothing, absolutely nothing, was supposed to fly near their aircraft. As they move to check what's happening, a security officer stops them and tells them to stay safe inside the conference room. But by then, the approaching aircraft begins launching drones intended to destroy Air Force One. Instantly, the plane's defense systems kick in. Turrets begin firing, taking out drone after drone. But then, inside the cabin, Sam notices a man acting suspiciously. Just as suspicion rises, the man launches a brutal attack, killing all the security officers on board. At the same time, one of the drones hits a section of the aircraft, causing massive damage. The pilots desperately try to evade the enemy aircraft and shoot it down, but nothing works. Suddenly, a drone slams directly into the cockpit. With the front of the plane destroyed, Air Force One begins to nosedive. A security officer rushes the President and Prime Minister to a secure compartment where several parachutes are stored. But the onboard terrorist grabs one for himself and sets the rest of the parachutes on fire. As he escapes, we see two parachutes miraculously survive the flames. One quick-thinking officer hands them over to the President and Prime Minister and tells them to jump, head for the safe house in Warsaw, the capital of Poland. The officer sacrifices himself to save the world leaders. Will and Sam leap from the crashing plane, parachuting toward the ground below. The aircraft crashes violently, killing everyone else on board. Within minutes, news breaks around the world. The President of the United States and the Prime Minister of the UK are both presumed dead. At the NATO summit in Italy, global leaders gather in mourning. No one has any clue who carried out the attack. In response, NATO leaders urge an emergency acceleration of the summit. Back in Washington, Vice President Elizabeth is sworn in as the new President of the United States. She prepares to attend the summit herself. Meanwhile, deep inside a remote forest in Belarus, we find Will and Sam alive. Will immediately tries to contact his security team, but Sam stops him. He says, "Look, if they could hit us inside such a secure aircraft, you think they can't track a simple phone call? The moment you call for help, they'll find us and kill us before anyone gets here." So, the two decide to stay silent and begin making their way toward the capital of Poland on foot. As they pass the wreckage of their fallen plane, they swear an oath. No matter what it takes, they will bring these terrorists to justice. Back in the States, President Elizabeth schedules a top-secret meeting. She wants to send a clear message to Russia, China, and Iran. America is far from broken. In the middle of all this, a Secret Service officer arrives to officially confirm the new president's identity. Because under her leadership, a covert intelligence alliance named Echelon will be activated. This includes the United States, Canada, the UK, Australia, and New Zealand. But what no one knows is Victor's people have already been watching this from the shadows. In that attack in Spain, they obtained secret information from the CIA and MI6. Using that, they managed to hack the entire Echelon system. Meanwhile, we see William and Samuel, who have made their way out of the jungle and into a more populated area. There, they see a group of young men partying in a house. William decides to ask them for help, hoping they might get him out of Belarus and into Poland. But Sam realizes this is never going to happen, because Belarus is a dictatorship that considers countries like America and England enemies. If those guys recognize them, it could lead to serious trouble. But William doesn't listen and keeps moving forward. And just like Samuel feared, things go exactly wrong. Even though the guys don't recognize them, they attack William and Samuel to rob them of their belongings. And now, a brutal fight breaks out between the President and Prime Minister and those young men. They get into a violent physical brawl. Fortunately, a woman shows up just in time, drives the guys away, and saves the President and Prime Minister. This woman had actually recognized them. After talking to them, she learns they want to go to Poland, so she promises to help them get there. And thus begins a long journey. The woman had some sheep she was planning to sell in Poland, so she loads them into a vehicle. She hides the president and prime minister in the back of the vehicle. After traveling a long distance, they finally reach the border. There, some army officers stop the vehicle for inspection. The woman bribes the officers with money and finally crosses into Poland. Once they reach the capital, both Sam and William thank the woman profusely. Then they arrive at the safe house. It turns out this was the home of an American secret agent working in Poland. The agent, named Carter, is overjoyed to see them alive. But elsewhere, Victor had already been keeping an eye on Carter, so he sees that both Sam and Will have gone to Carter's house. He immediately alerts his terrorist group to head to Poland and kill them both. Meanwhile, Carter is delighted to see Will alive. He brings them safely inside and says that right after the news of their death broke, something huge happened. The hackers who broke into the Echelon servers leaked thousands of confidential documents. At the White House, Ellie is seen speaking with several important officials. The hackers had exposed how America has influenced elections in other countries. Not only that, Germany discovered how France manipulated their elections through journalists. Even the Czech Republic learned how America had planted spies inside their country. Because of all this, the nations of Europe are furious with each other, and at any moment, war could break out, potentially leading to World War III. Back in Poland, Will decides he can't stay in hiding anymore. He wants to call the American embassy in Poland, but Sam keeps warning him that this would be a terrible idea because the terrorists could attack at any time. And just as they're discussing this, a group of terrorists arrive to kill them. Realizing this, Carter immediately arms himself with weapons and ammo to fight them off. He had actually set up cameras and explosives all over the house. With one explosion, several terrorists are killed. Carter uses the cameras to kill more of them, one by one. But eventually, one of the terrorists finds and destroys the camera system. So Carter starts running to save himself, but he gets shot in the arm during the attack. Seeing this, Sam and Will rush to save him, but Carter tells them to escape through the back door while he handles the terrorists. As they start to flee, Carter tries to launch a grenade attack, but the terrorists manage to catch the grenade and kill Carter with it. Fortunately, the president and prime minister manage to escape through the back door, but as soon as they reach the ground floor, 2 more terrorist soldiers take them hostage. They think their journey is over, but just then, a police car arrives and kills both terrorists. And we see that in that police car was Noel, the MI6 agent we saw get shot at the beginning of the story. Noel and Samuel already knew each other from before, because they had once worked together in the army. Noel tells them how he had followed Victor all the way from Spain and ended up reaching them. Now, Noel was walking down the road with them, trying to get them to safety while telling stories. That behind all of this, Victor Gradov was responsible. He wants to kill them to take revenge. Sam says, "Oh, he's doing all this because we didn't let him build nuclear weapons." Then Noel reveals everything. He says no. Victor never actually wanted to build nuclear weapons. Victor's son was a scientist. He had created a nuclear reactor that would never melt down. It's called pebble bed technology. Upon hearing this, Will says, "Wait, that's our technology. I thought our scientists had developed it themselves. But I never realized they had stolen it from Victor's son." Then Noel clarifies that to activate this reactor, Victor's son needed some plutonium, which Victor had bought from the black market. And as soon as we got this intel, we assumed Victor was trying to build a nuclear bomb. So, we attacked Victor's factory. And in that attack, Victor's son was killed. That's why Victor wants revenge now. Hearing all this, William realizes that Victor isn't actually the villain in this story. Rather, they were the ones who became a villain in Victor's life. Meanwhile, we return to the White House, where Ellie still hoped that Will was alive, but the vice president and the secretary from England had already given up hope that they were still alive. Instead, they decide to hold a meeting on how to regroup NATO once again. Meanwhile, the president and prime minister begin to wonder who among them had betrayed them. The prime minister of England suspects his secretary may have joined hands with the terrorists, and the US president suspects that his assistant Ellie might have betrayed them too. While talking about all this, they arrive at a station. From there, they needed to catch a train to reach Italy, and Noel quickly gets on the train with them to ensure their safety. On the other hand, an older man named James, who was working with Victor, sees everything. But strangely, this time, he doesn't tell Victor anything. Anyway, inside the train, we hear a conversation between Sam and Noel, and realize that back in the army, they used to like each other a lot. But during a mission in Libya, Samuel had for the first time decided to leave the army and run for election. And that was what created distance between them. Anyway, after the conversation ends, Noel steps outside to get some food for them, and just then, a man points a gun at them and takes them hostage. But fortunately, James comes from behind and shoots the man. However, before dying, that man also shoots James. Poor James had actually come there to reveal some secret information to them. Anyway, now the three of them start walking with James, and James says, "I worked with Victor to hack into Echelon. I had actually left all this behind and moved to Croatia to live a peaceful life. But Victor found me and took my family hostage, forcing me to do all this again. But during this work, some people very close to you helped me a lot. With their help, we hacked Echelon. And with their help, we crashed your plane. But I don't know who they are. If you want to find out, then go to the address I gave in Croatia. Because Victor communicates with them using a system I built. It can only be accessed using a secret code. James writes that code in William's hand and says, 'Find those people quickly and stop all of this.' Right after saying that, he dies. And now that they don't need to go to Poland but to Croatia instead, the three of them jump off the moving train to head toward Croatia. Meanwhile, Elizabeth, who had now become the President of the United States, sets up a meeting with the chancellors of Germany, France, and Italy. There, she tries to convince them that some outside terrorist is trying to break their friendship. Rather than destroying NATO, they should strengthen their alliance. That way, they can ruin all of that terrorist's plans. But after hearing all this, the German chancellor is the first to respond, saying, "What you're saying sounds nice, but you're not trustworthy." Saying that, he gets up and leaves. Not just that. The French chancellor says, "If we leave NATO, our people will vote for us." And then he leaves too. Finally, the Italian chancellor says, "Where there's no trust or belief, Italy has no place either." This means that in the upcoming NATO summit, almost all European nations are planning to withdraw from NATO. Meanwhile, after jumping off the train, Sam, William, and Noel steal a car and drive to the city of Zadar in Croatia. There, they go to the lower part of an abandoned building and see a small glass room where the secret communication system is placed. As they decide to activate that system, a group of terrorists suddenly arrives outside to attack them. When Noel tries to take them on alone, Samuel tells him, "No, you take Will and activate the system. Find out who the real traitor is. I'll handle the terrorists here." So, while Noel tries to activate the system using the code word written on Will's hand, Samuel fights the terrorists all on his own. But during the fight, Samuel becomes exhausted. Just then, the system reveals that Will's assistant, Ellie, has contacted Victor multiple times over the past few months. That means Ellie is the one who betrayed them. Will becomes furious, saying that Ellie must be punished severely. Suddenly, a helicopter arrives from outside and begins pulling away the entire glass room. Will and Noel get trapped inside the room, while Samuel tries desperately from outside to cut the rope and save them. But at the very last moment, the entire bunker is taken away by the helicopter. Not only that, Victor fires a rocket launcher at the building and kills Samuel inside. Meanwhile, inside the bunker, Will and Noel barely manage to climb onto the roof of a building. After finishing the mission, Victor and his team are flying away in the helicopter, but then two of his own men try to attack him, to wipe out all evidence. That means Victor isn't acting alone. Someone even more powerful is behind all of this. But Victor manages to kill both of them and saves his own life. Meanwhile, Noel and Will arrive at a port together, so they can head directly to Italy from there. From Noel's words, we understand that he really loved Samuel. He's deeply hurt by Samuel's death. Anyway, the next morning at the White House, the current president is watching the news with all her top officials. The news report says that after so many years, NATO may finally fall apart. Elizabeth is extremely stressed, and just then, she gets a call from William. He says, "Thank you so much, Elizabeth, for taking care of the presidency in my absence. I'm at a port in Italy. Send a car for me as soon as possible." Hearing this, Elizabeth is overwhelmed with joy. She immediately sends a car to bring William. Everything seems to be going well, but as soon as Will and Noel get in the car, a terrorist points a gun at them and takes them hostage. Then the gunman calls Elizabeth, and Elizabeth instructs him to take them to a specific location and kill them. Now, the mystery is finally revealed. That gunman explains everything. that behind all of this is none other than the current president, Elizabeth. She planned everything to remove Will from the presidency. And to succeed in this plan, she took help from Victor. Will realizes that, yes, Elizabeth did all this just to rise from vice president to president, and she framed Ellie with false evidence. Meanwhile, Victor's terrorist group was already on their trail to kill them. Inside the car, Will and Noel attack the gunman. While they fight inside the car, Victor's terrorists start shooting at them from outside. But suddenly, a fire truck attacks Victor's terrorists, and we see that inside the truck is Samuel, meaning he didn't die in the building explosion. Somehow, he survived and made it there to save them. So Samuel joins the fight in the truck, fighting off the gunman in an intense battle. Together, they manage to kill several terrorists and finally arrive at the NATO summit in Italy. Seeing this, one of the gunmen runs away from the scene. And finally, the two of them enter under army protection. But in the NATO summit, we see that one by one, France, Italy, and others are withdrawing from NATO. But at the very last moment, Will and Sam enter the meeting and say to everyone, "Look, now is not the time to lose our heads. We must think calmly. NATO is actually very important for all of us. We cannot just break it apart. The purpose of this organization is to fight together and unmask our enemies, just like my enemy, the current president, Elizabeth." Hearing this, Elizabeth starts speaking in front of everyone. Enough is enough. There should be no organization like NATO in this world. Because we, America, have oil. We can produce all the food. We have all the technology and manpower. Yet every year, because of NATO, we are forced to send our soldiers to die in European wars. They only take financial aid, weapons, and even humanitarian help from us. But they give us nothing in return. But this won't continue anymore. But before she could finish her speech, Victor shoots and kills Vice President Elizabeth from a distance. Not only that, a coordinated group of terrorists starts a barrage of gunfire, killing several world leaders in the process. To stop all this, Noel arrives. He fights all the terrorists on his own. Seeing the chaos, Victor tries to escape in a helicopter. Noel tries to stop him alone, but then another terrorist attacks Noel. Seeing all this, Samuel and William can't stay quiet anymore. They jump into the fight against the terrorists. On one side, they're fighting the terrorists, while on the other, Noel is battling the attacker and eventually kills him by striking his head. Meanwhile, the president and prime minister chase down Victor and manage to capture him. But in the middle of intense crossfire, Victor grabs a small weapon and takes William hostage, attempting to escape in the helicopter. But at the very last moment, the fact that such a dangerous terrorist might escape, neither of them can accept it, so they risk their lives to stop Victor. Victor shoots an arrow that injures Samuel, but William, still unhurt, smashes a statue into the helicopter's blades, causing it to crash. Victor dies on the spot. At last, this brutal battle comes to an end. Then we see a news report showing events 2 months later. NATO has been reformed. Countries are rejoining voluntarily. And William and Samuel have worked hard to maintain a transparent, friendly relationship among all these nations. The two of them have become such close friends that one day they were seen eating together in a cafe in England, a moment that instantly went viral across global media. And we also learn that Noel has left for a new mission abroad. With that, today's story ends. Let me know in the comments how you liked it. Signing off for now.